Said recording in progress, so go ahead.
Oh.
You're good.
Okay.
That's a good sign.
To my left over here is Will Tolles and Cecil Little, Bruce Julian, Andy Ransom, and we have two alternates, Hap Had and Hannah Sled in the, then to my left over here is Crystal and, can't think of his name. What's his name, Brian?
Lynn Rao.
Lynn. And welcome Lynn and anyone and Jay and Brian and anyone in the audience that wishes to speak to any of the applications, please indicate so. But before I call the first application, one of our board members would like to speak very briefly, so go ahead, Mr. Julian.
Thank you, Edna. During this week, I thought it might be a good time to refresh some of the responsibilities of the Wetlands Board since there's been so many changes in the last 18 months. On July 1st, 2020, amendments passed by the General Assembly regarding tidal wetlands became effective, with subsequent guidelines being issued by VMRC. The Code of Virginia reads, in part, the alteration to a shoreline is not permitted when the alteration will result in the drainage or discharge of effluent stormwater which will impair wetlands, water quality, or other marine resources. Number 4 was that first one. There's several other ones. Number 5, when there are alternatives which can achieve the given purpose without adversely affecting water quality, marine fisheries, wildlife marshes, oyster grounds, submerged aquatic vegetation, or other natural resources. 6, if the local government has determined that the proposed alteration does not comply with the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act as amended, and any regulations adopted thereunder required to promote coastal resilience and adaptation to sea level rise and climate change. Secondly, in our own Code of Ordinances in Lancaster County, the factors for consideration in granting or denying a permit is, of course, testimony from anyone in the county or the Commonwealth, the impact of proposed development on public health, safety, and welfare, and also the proposed development's conformance with standards prescribed in the Code of Virginia, Section 28.2-13.8, and guidelines promulgated pursuant to the Code of 28.2-13.1. The Wetlands Board can grant the permit if all of the following criteria are met. 1, the anticipated public and private benefit of the proposed activity exceeds the anticipated public and private detriment. Number 2, the proposed development conforms to the standards prescribed in Virginia Code 28.2-13.8 and the guidelines promulgated pursuant to the Code of Virginia 28.2-13.01. And 3, the proposed activity does not violate the purposes and intent of the Code of Virginia. If the board finds that any of the criteria listed in this subsection of this section are not met, the board shall deny the permit application, but allow the applicant to resubmit the application in modified form. I just thought it was good to pull out some of those key things of changes that we've had in all the wetland boards across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Edna.
Okay. First on the agenda is that, excuse me, Louis Garrett, am I saying it correctly? Yeah, okay. Someone representing them? State your name for the record, please.
Good morning. My name is Robert Clater, 175 Shell Court, Urbana, Virginia, 23175.
Okay, I'd like to read the ad. Louis Garrett and care of Robert Clater is requesting permission to construct a 70 and 50 linear foot rock seal with associated fill and plantings and refurbish 190 and 140 linear feet of riprap revetment with the associated bank grading along the shoreline of Indian Creek. located off Virginia State Highway 651 Boys Camp Road, on Virginia State Highway 1037 Castle Lane, tax map number 29-13E, BMRC number 21-1107. Go ahead.
Yeah, this project is basically, there are 4 sections to it. As you're facing the water from left to right, the section A, as I have it labeled on the plan diagram, is for a living shoreline. It's a 70-foot section. It'll be from the pier going to the left. In the middle section, section B, the request there is to add 2 feet of riprap to the existing riprap revetment. This will be above the mean high water line, but just to reinforce that. In addition, on that particular section, section B, they do want to take the slope from approximately a 1-1 slope to approximately a 2-1 slope. So there will be some bank grading and some brush removal and some tree removal. The bank will be replanted with rose grass at the completion. Section C, which is turning the corner, is another living shoreline. There's some existing grasses there, some existing sand, and so nothing to be removed, just add the riprap sill. Section D is simply a maintenance project. There'll be no grading, no additions. It will be replacing rocks or rebuilding the wall as necessary to maintain the integrity of the wall on section D. You're welcome. Any questions?
How about E, F, and G? That section there.
There's a section A, B, C, and D.
Well, you got E, F, G here.
Oh, those were my markers from my markers.
Yeah, but it's showing rock and grass. That's that place, I believe where the steps went down to the shoreline. Might have been 3 or 4 steps, I'm not sure. Some of the guys, you know what I'm talking about, Bruce?
Oh, that would be in the corner. There are a few steps going down.
Yeah, he's calling that section C.
Oh, okay.
50-foot
okay,
riprap sill.
Okay. Just trying to get my... Okay. Is that all?
That's all that I have. Welcome any questions?
Okay, members of the board.
I don't have a problem with section A and C. I guess it's, what I'm seeing is E to G, if I'm correct on the revision, where you're showing a living shoreline. I don't have a problem with that. I got a problem with along the riprap, which is, I think it's section is B and D. Is that
Right.
correct? This
Yes,
section here,
Section B is the front
from
section.
the living shoreline A to B, and then from G to, I guess it's section D at 140 feet. I have a problem with that. I don't see a problem at all with the existing vegetation on that particular area where you're showing 190 feet and then 140 feet. And there's a lot of vegetation up there. I think, in fact, that vegetation is supporting that embankment. And I don't know what the other board members are thinking, but I'm looking to deny those 2 sections.
Let me clarify section D. There was that was purely maintenance and was we weren't doing any grading on section D. That was just to clean up the existing riprap revetment and to make sure that it was was a
Well-
worthy structure. So there's no grading or no removal on section D. But certainly on section B, that is the plan. And again, it was going to add 2 feet of rock to the existing riprap revetment, and then to grade the bank back so it was more usable and more attractive.
That's it.
When we were there, I know that, but this part right here,
Yeah, that's,
wasn't he planning on removing the vegetation off of here?
that's a good question.
See,
The
section,
The 140 feet, which is, as we're seeing it here, is
section right here in the
right
front.
here.
Section
No, this
is
D
D.
is the
Code.
140 feet. Yeah,
This
we
is
were not.
section D,
Section D.
existing
Section D,
riprap.
we're just
You're not, are you
just
moving,
replacing rocks as necessary, and
that's all you're doing is replacing rock. You're not
we're not grading,
affecting the bank.
not on section D.
Okay.
Section B, yes.
Yeah.
I must have misunderstood something on site, because I certainly remember something about the vegetation being removed in that section. But if not, you should, in the future, state that on this application, what exactly it is. It says riprap, existing riprap, we saw that. But if there's no bank grading, you need to indicate it, so we're all on the same page.
I agree.
But you are going to affect and grade back to a 2-to-1 grading, section, that 190 feet of section B, is that right?
That is correct. That's the proposal.
I don't see a problem with the embankment there. I think the vegetation is supporting the landowner's property. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So there's clearly some washed out areas in there. I didn't specifically mark them. But, probably 40 feet in from the pier is definitely a washed out area.
What do you think's causing that, the washed out area?
Don't know the answer.
It's not from the bottom. It's not shoreline erosion. Looks to me, I know the place you're talking about. Looks like overland flow.
Correct.
We still open for questions, Edna?
Yes.
On page, of your revision of 624, on the cross-section for section A,
Correct.
what are the slopes you've got on the breakwater? I don't see that.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
What's your side slopes on the breakwater? I see it's 5 feet high and 3 feet high, but what are the side slopes?
I apologize, I'm still not sure I'm following.
What's
It's
the
a very
slope of the rocks?
minor slope.
What's the slope of the rocks?
Oh, the slope of the rocks. Well, 5 feet up, 3. Just a little 1.5 to 1.
Well, if you take half the width of that embankment, which is 2.5 feet, and you divide those two numbers, it's 0.83 to 1.
Okay.
That's, I've never seen any structure like that designed that steep. That's very unusual to me. And you mentioned cleanup and repair. Could you describe what that is on the rock? I don't know what that means.
At the,
Yeah.
it would be an inspection of the revetment.
Current slope.
As needed, rocks would be replaced and/or the filter cloth would be replaced. The worst case, the rocks would be removed through filter cloth, new filter cloth be put back down, and the rocks were placed on the revetment. So it'd be essentially a rebuild of the
So,
existing.
so there hasn't been an inspection made?
There has been, the contractor did. Obviously, they don't know the condition of the filter cloth underneath the rocks, to know if the filter cloth needs to be replaced.
Well, I'm confused because, the plan's supposed to be complete as needed, and whereas is not a plan. I don't see any damage to the existing riprap. I don't see any pictures of that. Also, look at your revision of 624 on your offshore breakwater. You've got the same steep slope on that breakwater as well, 0.83 to 1. Again, I've never seen any structures built that steeply, nor any of these plans. Are these things to scale?
They are.
What's the scale?
They should be marked on each section,
1 inch to 2?
right?
On the cross-section for section B, that's the one where you're proposing to slope the bank back to 2 to 1. You show the existing riprap, and then you're going up, you're proposing an additional 2 feet. Can you explain why that is?
That was the way the contractor proposed it. It was to provide additional support for the bank. And then allow a takeoff point for a,
Who's designing this? You or the contractor?
the contractor put in the initial proposal.
So he's designing it, not you?
He designed it, I drew it. So yes, I'm responsible for this drawing.
But he's not the agent.
No, he's not the agent.
So you've got an existing riprap height of 2.5 feet, right? Correct?
Correct.
Above mean low? And the current existing riprap is flush with the slope, correct?
Correct.
So I need some explanation as to, then you're stacking another 2 feet on top of that. So does the bank get notched back to support that additional 2 feet?
No, it's just using, there obviously is some slope to the bank. It's just using the slope of the bank to,
But there's nothing to stack it on if the existing riprap is flush. There is nothing to stack the additional 2 feet on. How would you do that?
it'll follow the bank up the slope.
I have just some comments, and I guess I'd like to ask the same question of both Jay and Brian. If this application were to come in with the Section A and Section C components standing alone, the living shoreline components, would that application even come to the board?
Yeah, there's impacts to the intertidal zone that would need to be authorized. But A and C, sill, breakwater, how it was referred to, yeah, it would need, where those impacts are intertidal, it would need authorization from the board. I know, because we were talking about Section B and D, refurbish, stone on top of stone. I know that this board and others in the past, given the prior guidelines, that riprap is a wetland, can be a wetland community. If it's stone between mean low and mean high, it's wetlands. It's rock wetlands. It's intertidal rubble community, whatever you want to call it. And some boards look at that as, well, the impact is already there, putting rock on top of rock doesn't require a permit. I think this board always has required additional authorization for rock even on top of rock. The new guidance gets away from different wetland types, and it's either intertidal or it's not, and it's either vegetated or it's not. But to get to your first question is, yes, I don't have the drawings in front of me. I grabbed the wrong set of plans. But where the proposed new stone is intertidal, yes, that requires authorization from this board.
Brian? You want to comment, Brian? Or could you comment, Brian? I guess I'm trying to fish out here where a general permit would, on what situations does a general permit apply?
Not if there isn't fill and planting associated with it. A standalone sill does not meet the definition of a general permit 2 or 1. It's a living shoreline, or it's along the lines of the definition of a living shoreline, but it doesn't meet the specific criteria of the general permit number 2 if it doesn't include additional sand fill, wetland plantings of at least 8 feet wide, and any number of other criteria. So while it may be a living shoreline type project, it's not one that meets the criteria of the general permit.
Yeah, he's got the fetch. The fetch is within spec and all that stuff, but you're right, Jay's right. The sand and planting is alluded to, but it's not explicitly depicted, and the width isn't wide enough to trigger a true Group 2 project where we would just say, Group 2, no hearing required.
And in that case, I'll just add to it, in that case, once the board or the staff at the board determines that all the criteria are met for a general permit, we, VMRC, issues the permit for all of it. It's not that a wetland permit isn't issued, it's that we do it through our general permit criteria. So it's not an exempt activity, it's authorized, but it's authorized by general permit that we administer once we've determined and once we verify that you guys agree that it meets the GP.
With specific conditions? Is that correct, Jay? The GP spells out specific conditions?
Yes, and I don't have it on me, but yeah, there's any number of criteria that need to be met. I mentioned, a minimum of 8 feet of width, the stone no higher than 1 foot above mean high water, the fetch requirements. So agents oftentimes don't submit an application for a particular type of permit. They just submit an application, and it's up to us, the regulatory community, to determine what it fits under. But when I look at Section C, for instance, 7 feet of width behind the stone, no indication that there's addition. Remainder will be filled with sand. Well, actually, he does indicate. Remainder will be filled with sand and planted with Spartina alterniflora on 18-inch centers. I guess you could put an arrow to that. But regardless, 7 feet wide is not wide enough. In addition, over on the left-hand side, you've got 2 dashed lines, presumably mean low water and mean high water, indicating a 2-foot tide range with 1 foot of additional height of stone. Doesn't show, he notes filter cloth under the sill, but doesn't show it. So these are the kinds of things that if staff, and I'm going to go out on a limb and speak for Brian, and I know I'm speaking for myself, I don't have time to go through each and every application and call out all the deficiencies or missing pieces. We get to the commission, we get to this point, and they become evident. And the board always has an option to table it at the request of the applicant for whatever additional information is requested, deny it outright, approve it as modified. You've got lots of opportunities. In a perfect world, this wouldn't have been on an agenda as a complete application if staff had the available time to go through with a fine-tooth comb and check each one. You all have your criteria for getting it on an agenda. It comes in, the money gets paid, it gets advertised, we're on an agenda. So, and here we are. And so it's left to, that's part of your job, if you will, you know, you're volunteers, but it's part of your responsibility to do exactly what you're doing now, is finding where these shortcomings are. Fortunately, this board goes out to each site and meets with hopefully the applicant, agent, contractor, whomever, and gets a lot of this stuff worked out either at the site meeting. But here we are today, and there's clearly a lot of questions. But as usual, that's my long answer to whatever your question was.
Well, I was just trying to fish out there, Jay, if a person definitely is interested in a living shoreline, do they have to go through the complete JPA process, or is there a fast
Yes.
track? Is there a fast track to that? You still go
You still have
through,
to submit an application. And that application, I know Joey's done it, I know Craig has done it, somewhere in, you know, whatever page of the application, describe the project. Seeking a living shoreline GP2 for the following, you know, however you want to do it. But there isn't a living shoreline GP2 application. This is it, the only tool we have right now. So a lot of times during the review, it's pretty clear that that's what, there's that other question, you know, did you consider, question 10, the living shoreline, living shorelines are proposed where deemed appropriate, repairing, enhancing. In this particular application, there's any number of places in the application where that could be added. We, at VMRC, have not revised the application. We have not come up with a new application. I'm not going to go into staffing shortfalls and all that other stuff, but when an applicant wants a living shoreline or wants to do anything on the shoreline, they submit an application, and it's up to us to determine what kind of permit they're going to get.
and I suppose, and is it with the case with any applicant that disagrees with the decision, this board may appeal that
Certainly,
to the commission?
certainly,
Thank you.
yeah.
Edna, based on what I've heard today in our site visit and my review of the code, for the following reasons, I don't find this application consistent with code of Virginia or code in the county. Increasing the height of the revetment by 2 feet, stripping off and destroying native vegetation, grading the bank 2-to-1 slope to expose infertile soil, replacing native vegetation with love grass, which is only going to be overtaken by the natives, cutting down perfectly healthy hardwood trees, and increasing sediment delivery to the Commonwealth. Therefore, I make a motion to deny this permit.
Y'all want to make a second? The motion's on the floor to
Well, again, I
deny.
don't have a problem with the,
Have we had the public hearing portion?
Sir?
Have we had the public hearing
Not yet.
portion?
No,
Yeah,
we
you need
haven't.
to-
We can't
Okay, I'm
really
sorry.
make
Bring
the
that up.
motion yet until we go through. Wait a minute, Bruce, just hold a minute.
As long as we do it before there's a vote.
the
Um,
public hearing and the Zoom. Anyone on Zoom?
okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? Jay?
I've said probably
Brian?
more than I need to.
No,
Um,
do you have anybody online raising their hand? Okay. We need to make sure we check on that each time.
Oh. The motion's on the floor.
If I can restate it.
One question that I had, was if it's all of these problems that we talking about now, I'd like to ask the agent if he would like to, ask us to table it until the next meeting to give you chance to answer all the different things that's been stated here today.
Well,
I mean, we all, apparently, it's a lot of questions and all that's been raised, and
yeah, it'd be interesting if we could vote on each section, but I certainly can prepare sections A and C so that they conform to living shoreline standards. That was the original intent there. Section B seems to be the largest one. And I'll need to get back with the owner and see what they would like to do there.
Let me ask Mr. Julian a question.
I have a question to Brian. I know that code allows any applicant to resubmit, and based on any decision of this board, can resubmit an application at any time in the future. Is that correct?
That is true, yes.
And is, at that point, is a new fee charged?
Technically, it would be. If it's a whole new submittal, it would be a new fee. Our informal policy has always been like what the chairwoman just did, to, if there's a general consensus of the board that a project as submitted currently before you would be denied, you give the applicant a chance to table it and revise. That's kind of just a chivalrous thing to do in a way. Although it's not required, there could be cases where you would just deny it, and you're right, they could resubmit. With other boards that I'm staffed to, there's a waiting period. Like with some of the Board of Supervisors requests, they've got to wait 6 months or a year before they can reapply. But with your process, if they come back next month with a whole new permit request, that would be a new fee and a new VMRC number, et cetera. So, that being said, that's a lot of money it's much, as your staff person, I would recommend to be gentle and to urge someone to table it and redesign it, or remove the parts that you guys have obviously expressed your reasons why you think it's inconsistent with the guidelines. And I think it's quite clear to say that there's a consensus of the board that definitely supports that. That being said, I would give the applicant a chance to withdraw for now, or table it, and then revise and come back with a revised application that might find.
Well, you know, if there's a new application next month or whenever, and section B is still in there, they still want to take that back, it's going to be denied.
Right, correct, yeah, so that's.
So my question is, if Mr. Julian is willing to revise his motion to approve section A and C and deny B.
No, I think that's bad precedent to start redesigning an applicant's. That's not our job here. You know, how long is, we're already in revision 1. How long has this been going on? With three or more months?
A year.
So, you know, I just don't,
My involvement, but
I just don't see benefit of going on and on and on and wasting additional precious staff time, both at the state level or the county.
come forward, sir, and state your name for the record. Come forward to the podium and state your name for the record, please.
Good morning. I'm Lou Guerra, the resident at 194 Castle Lane. Let's just go ahead and can it. Withdraw it. The application.
Just withdraw the
Just
application.
withdraw. And we'll start all over again.
Would you Would you
Consent to that?
resubmit application later?
later.
Okay, we have heard from the owner and applicant that he'd like to withdraw this application. So Mr. Julian has a motion on the floor. If he would withdraw that motion and make a new motion, is that possible?
Yes, ma'am. I will withdraw my motion and honor Mr. Guerra's request to withdraw this application.
Okay,
I will second.
all in favor? Okay, thank you. Just a minute, I'll proceed.
Who seconded that?
Oh,
Okay, thanks.
okay. Thank you all. Okay. Next on the agenda is that of Robert Hummel. Yeah, right here. Is someone here representing Mr. Humble?
They want to show up uninvited. Yes, Joseph Scott, P.O. Box 315, Kilmarnock, Virginia 22482. I'm the agent for the applicant.
Okay, I'll read the ad. Mr. Humble is requesting permission to construct 118 linear feet of riprap revetment along the shoreline of Carter's Creek, located off Virginia State Highway 654, Newtown Road, on James Cove Landing, tax map number 34-161, BMRC number 21-1349. Go ahead.
Yes, this is a revetment in front of a failing timber bulkhead. I think it's pretty obvious at sight. You can see the site pretty good because it has a pier that you can walk out on, and the applicant doesn't wish to, get rid of all the mountain laurel and all that stuff on the hill, which would probably be required in order to make a living shoreline in this particular area. That's portion of Carter's Creek is fairly deep, drops off fairly quickly. So it's one of those, almost like a maintenance sort of thing. Either put another bulkhead in front of it or put some stone in front of it to build a living shoreline, which it's all on page 10, or is it page 10, or I need to memorize that. Question 10 on page 8. Hopefully that addressed all of that issue as to why we're proposing this as opposed to a living shoreline in this particular case. So, I guess you should public comment, but if you guys have any questions for me. Question?
Anyone on the board have any comments, things they'd like to say?
Yeah, I think that this is the way to handle it.
I don't get too many easy ones, so.
You leave the vegetation and I think it works.
Right, with the high bank like that, without significant alteration to it, and on the side where he has kind of a living shoreline occurring naturally, we're gonna stop just short of that, so.
That's right.
Kind of is what it is, so.
Madam Chairman, I was just wondering what kind of Chick-fil-A sandwiches we were getting from Joey today.
I gotta go to work after this, so, outside hot
He
weather.
might have a Chick-fil-A,
getting-
but we're not
I'm
gonna
getting
give
hungry.
our order.
I'm getting hungry here.
Yeah, it's
Hey, Joey,
my favorite place to
if
get
I was
sick
at
at.
home, I'd fix you some hamburgers.
I just wanted, Joey, we were out there on the site, and I commended Mr. Hummel for his management of the shoreline. It would be so great if everyone appreciated encouraging natives, taking the non-natives and invasives out, and appreciating, and it doesn't have any adverse impact on his view. I really appreciate that, and I commended him for doing that. He was a little shocked when 12 of us unloaded.
I had meant to send him an email on Monday because I had a hearing in Middlesex, so that's why I could not be there.
So I appreciate that, and just also appreciate the fact that this, just to confirm, this will all be done by water.
Yes.
And everything, no above. And also the one thing I did have, let's see, on your cross-section of A, all of those slopes are 2-to-1 on the rock?
Yes.
That's all I have. Edna?
Anyone else? Ron?
No, ma'am. We did go through, for the record, the board on site did go through living shoreline criteria, both with the review of the proposal and on site. And I think the prevailing consensus of the board was that indeed this site is facing north. There's a huge amount of mature hardwood timber that shades out any possibility of marsh grass surviving in that area. Evidence of that is to the left of the pier. You have adequate, nice sandy substrate at the right elevation for marsh grass to grow. And there's some arum growing in that area, but there's no intertidal wetland vegetation because it's just too darn shady. So the thought was, even if you created a living shoreline in front, the chances of that planted nourishment surviving is pretty slim to none. Since the back shore is already covered with an ancient bulkhead that's failing, and you have a tall, properly vegetated bank above it, it was best to undertake the approach that's being proposed here. That's the least amount of impact. And a living shoreline might be made to work there, but doing so would totally remove the Chesapeake Bay Act buffer and also might have a dubious chance of success. So I just wanted to kind of state that for the record, that we confirmed that a living shoreline would not be appropriate in this exact area.
Jay, do you have anything?
No comment other than it does require a permit from us for the stone that'll be channelward of the bulkhead, where the bulkhead is at low water on state bottom.
Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move the project be approved. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Hang my nose from Okay, is there any other business?
Approval of the minutes from last month.
Brian, I would just ask any progress on our violation situations?
Your Flamia case, he has hired Craig Palubinsky. I have not seen anything from Craig at this time. We were going to hold off proceeding with our suit against this individual until we had given him kind of a reasonable time to come up with that application. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was September. So time's ticking on this individual to come up with an alternative plan to stave off our pursuing of suit. Of course, this individual does have counsel who feels that county staff acted in error, and but he thought that that maybe getting after the fact approval or providing some sort of remediation through Bayshore Design would make such a suit not necessary. As far as Windmill Point Resort goes, that is in the process of change of ownership. I did meet with them 2 weeks ago on that site to talk about it. As you guys are aware, and the public record will show, it's very difficult to get somebody in this room who is actually legally responsible for that site. I personally think that's by design, But,
So that's in the works of someone else buying that property now?
yes, there is a different person who is actually the CEO of that company now that runs
company?
that,
Just trying to know.
yes. The individual who previously represented himself to be the CEO of Vinings Marine Group has moved to Florida. Staff investigation in that area has shown that that individual now is involved with a whole different marina down there and restaurant and situation, and I'm not sure if he's even in the picture anymore. The bad thing is that some of the riprap that they, if you could call it riprap, it was just rocks, as y'all know, dumped on the back shore with no filter cloth. Much of that offending material is gone now, which we figured would happen. Some of it's sunk down into the sand, and some of it's rolled out into the Rappahannock River and is down in the substrate now. So the county is in the process of pursuing a permit for our site. That's run into some snags, as I told y'all beforehand. So we're kind of in a catch-22 because the county would like to get a permit for our small public beach there,
Yeah.
such as remains. The adjacent property owner being the person who is the offender in that case has yet to sign off on the adjacent property owner acknowledgement form. So
If I can interject.
we're going
real quick,
nowhere quick.
Because I wanted to bring that up too. If you can provide me, their address, name, we will send them an APO letter that says, if we don't hear from you in 15 days, we assume you don't
Okay.
object.
All right.
And the same thing with the condos on the other side. We don't look at those as individual owners, we look at that as a, development. So if there's someone that we can send that to, because we're ready to go. I think the Corps of Engineers has already issued their permit.
Yes.
VIM's had comments that were, they weren't anti. And we've done everything we need to do except verify that the adjacent property owners, and I kind of didn't want to notify that guy, knowing that there was some, it was my understanding that there already was an objection to it, although I didn't have a formal objection, so I don't have a formal objection. But if you can provide me with whoever the landowner is now, I'll just send them a very boilerplate letter that says, the county wants to do this next door. If we don't hear from you in 15 days, we'll assume you don't object. If he does object, then we'll have to go down that route. But it's in limbo right now, because when the application was submitted, it was my understanding that you were in the process of doing that, and like you said, ran into snags. So that's fine. If you don't do it, we will.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, I'll get that to you as soon as I can. Also, set a new side profile for that project.
Yeah,
MSC's
'cause
wanted to see that.
I don't think there's any benefit to the county to holding that up. If you've got some momentum finally, and maybe some funding to do something down there for the public, regardless of what the neighbors, and I hadn't heard any comment from the condos. A lot of times, anytime, like with the fishing pier and all that other stuff, we're against anything. But, I'm
Yeah,
ready to issue our permit.
They've told us that they were in favor of it and that they were going to get a letter to you to that effect, but that was about a month ago, and I
Well,
don't know
I
if
can-
it's
I can do-
lost in there.
Yeah, that's fine, and I can, because that way, when we send it, if we don't hear from them in 15 days,
Yeah.
we assume don't object, so it kind of speeds things along that way.
So, yeah, so hopefully, like I said, I'm working on finding out who the new CEO is of that group and getting them to, they now want to do some work to the jetty and things like that, and they are going to need some legitimate permitting. So what I'm trying to do is get them to roll that all into one. nature has largely rolled away the initial violation. So it was just poorly designed,
Yeah, out of the dump truck.
yeah, just dumped rubble, basically, so.
I guess the bright side is at that particular site, you know, yes, it represented an active violation versus a passive violation of allowing everything to fall into the river. It's kind of like Andy Wiley's old place down in Irvington. You know, what's he doing down there? Well, a tornado hit, and it looks better. You know, I mean, so
Yeah.
it's been tricky for a lot of reasons, and the ownership issue is the primary reason. And for what it's worth, let them know that we at VMRC and the state and every other place would love to see some work done down there to benefit
Yeah, yeah.
them and the bay. So,
Okay, if you two have finished, I have someone in the audience that wishes to speak. Short and brief.
Short and brief, yes, ma'am.
unlike us.
The Dispatch had a article in the paper recently that said that DCR received $1 million to support living shoreline activities. And I was thinking that we receive a number of applications that riprap is the way to go. And when we go out and look at the place, the living shoreline approach might be much better. And so I'm thinking that the possibility of a two-step approach. One is to try to convince the applicant that one, living shoreline is a little bit better, and two, we might be able to get some funds to support that particular activity. And what would be involved is to go to DCR with an application for a living shoreline proposal and to request living shoreline funding. Now, I brought this up and immediately Brian jumped all over me and so everything. So I'd like to just get whether or not we might want to pursue some request going to DCR or the organization under DCR that's going to go and implement this particular activity to see whether or not they would accept applications that come on in from the local location or local counties, and I'd just like to get your reaction to that if you can. And I don't know whether or not you would be involved in this particular process.
Not from getting the funding or anything like that, I mean, from the permitting standpoint, but for what it's worth, like any other funding, if it's available, you want to get your name in the hat, because if you guys don't, it'll get spent somewhere else. So if you can find projects and at least show your interest, I think that's a great idea. I don't, you know, a lot of times when the board has done stuff in the past, it's been sort of at Belle Isle State Park or wherever there's a public, you know, it's a little tricky when you're, you know, helping a private individual get funding with public funds, because then other individuals are going, well, how come he got money and I didn't? But, you know, through the Northern Neck Planning District Commission and other things, it's, I mean, coastal resiliency, sea level rise, climate change, you know, all these buzzwords are out there, and now the government is starting to realize it and starting to free up some money, and so, yeah, I would assist however I can, but
I don't know where we would go. Well, I'd get
I've
your
got an
reaction
idea.
and then where we go from here.
I'd just like to say something. As the board, I feel we need to think about this, because if we take it upon ourselves to help individuals, then you're gonna have a mess on your hands. But he helped him, or they helped him, they won't help me do anything. Why doesn't the landowner themselves apply for this?
a lot of times they're unaware of it.
But what I'm saying, it should be advertised to make people aware, because when you get, you know, prioritizing, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I believe it would be up to the landowner itself to be abreast of what's available and perhaps pursue it themselves.
And we're not in any way available to assist the owner?
Well, see, once you do here, you're looking at a big county, and you're looking at a big problem, and you know how people can be, God forbid. Well, they helped him, they won't do nothing for me. What's the problem?
I have a suggestion. As I also read the same article, Hap, I don't see that the focus of this $1 million, which isn't going to go very far, after 50% is taken off for DCR staff time, that it's not we've already got a landowner cost share program to help landowners do this through the conservation districts. And so I don't see the focus of this program. My suggestion, and Edna, you and I have talked about this, is opportunities. There's been how many years since we've had workshops
Oh, yeah.
on designing? There's been opportunities. So my suggestion, maybe this is a motion, that we invite DCR representative to one of our meetings to present to us the full buffet of opportunities available to us. So we might explore and find out exactly. Now, if we're talking about Whoopi getting $1,000, I'm not sure we want to expend, Brian, $5,000 in an application to do that. But for things like public things, maybe Windmill Point, public, maybe some other things that could come up. I'd like to get them standing right here, because I love dealing with bureaucracy. And so that's what I would suggest to us, invite them to our meetings
I
to
think we
present.
need to perhaps have this, because everybody can hear it and be on the same page, know what is available, what they can do or can't do,
Yep.
how to approach what they need to do as far as application-wise and cost and all this good stuff. I mean, I think HAP has a wonderful idea, but I don't want to see us get into something.
We don't need to create another cost share program.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, you know where I'm coming from.
With our
I'm all for
bountiful,
helping people,
Well,
but
I'll tell you what, let me talk to the Seas folks and see if they would like to come to your October meeting.
is that who it's coming through? Seas?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike Van Landingham and Aaron Went are the two main contact people there. Like I told you guys, I met with them at the Windmill Point Beach recently, and they seemed to know this was coming because they alluded to the possibility of assistance to the county soon on some things, which I would gladly accept. Like Jay said, and he's right, you get your name in the hat as quick as you can. There is a piece of county property, I'm not gonna tell you publicly where that is right now, that we're working on also, that was a partnership with another entity in the county that needs workforce housing in that area. And there may be an opportunity soon to provide a little bit of public access to an area, but also it needs shoreline work. So that may be a good opportunity to do a living shoreline project with a public access pier and kind of canoe kayak launch kind of thing, and then get some visibility for the effort.
Well, and with public property, everyone can benefit. I also
Right.
agree with Jay, these are our tax dollars, and if we don't want to bring back any of our tax dollars to Lancaster County, it will get spent.
Yes,
It's all going to get spent.
well, the last thing I would suggest is, I don't really have a lot of experience working with the planning district commissions, but I know Middle Peninsula is very active in this realm. I believe Northern Neck is, and then you've got Master Gardeners. I mean, there's so many, what I see happening is there's so many different resources, there's so many different great ideas, but they're not meshing, they're not getting together. And I don't know that they're not working counter to one another, but they're certainly not complementary to one another, in my opinion. How to make that happen, I don't know. But it's good to be aware of it. I think, you in your role here at the board, beyond just regulatory, is you are assisting, or you should be assisting the taxpayers, the constituents. And we've always said, by the time an application comes in the door, you've got an applicant and a contractor and maybe an agent that have got a plan. They haven't checked with anybody. They just, and they're getting more in tune with what may be available, but they look across and they see a bulkhead and that's what they want. So VIMS is, I very rarely agree with VIMS, it seems like, but, early on, they were saying, these pre-site visits, pre-application meetings, let's all get together, and maybe it's not a whole board, but a few individuals representing stuff, and before we put pen to paper, let's get them going in the right direction. And a lot of times you can assist getting them in the right direction with a little financial incentive to say, hey, if you go this route, you might be able to get some funding from these guys.
I'd like to, if we can pull this off, Brian, all these people that Jay just need to be invited to. The planning district needs to be invited, the Master Naturals, Friends of the Rappahannock need to be set in here, at least invited. And let's all hear it, and maybe there's opportunities to work together in partnership with a little more consistent.
I have an idea. I don't know whether to work or not, but it's just an idea. I'll ask Brian. Instead of, what's the possibility that we could have a workshop like we've had before, sponsored by the Lancaster County Wetlands Board, and use some of the funds in our civil charge to do this? And
That's-
get people that's to speak, that's gonna speak, and we know what they're saying and what's what. Instead of having it at a meeting here, what could we have it, and have it where,
Yeah, I don't want to blame it on COVID, but I think if it
Yeah.
had not been for that, you probably would have had one in the
this
last
is what
year,
I'm
just
saying, but
because
now
we
that
just-
everything,
we do
apparently,
those
we
every
better
3 or
do
4
it
years.
fast. Cause you don't know how long, many days before you're gonna be shut
Yeah, and
down again.
I'll be honest with you, I personally would move that you should wait until the climate in this country settles out. I would not plan that right now.
You mean a big public?
Yeah, because of gatherings, I personally don't want to be involved in that.
What? Well, at some point, whenever.
The
we
only
get-
reason I participate in public hearings now is because I have to.
Yep.
I don't
Well,
want to work around
we
the
have it at a
uncertainties of
meeting,
these
so-
health issues going on right now.
If
Till,
we,
I think a year or two from now, that'll be settled down. Let's do it.
yeah,
now.
but how about sooner at one
Or
of our
5, the way
meetings?
it's going.
How about sooner, like you said, at one of our meetings? I was just
Oh,
thinking.
yeah, for us, sure, I could do that, but
My idea at some point, I totally agree with Brian on the public, but Hap's suggestion, I'd like a workshop to be paid for out of the $1 million, not us. Let the state help us conduct a workshop at some point in the future. So at least we need to explore what the
Yeah,
opportunities
that's a
are.
good question. Good, I think that's good.
okay.
So Brian, you gonna contact him?
Yeah,
We could get a rep.
Hey, one more job.
Well, or hey, it was Hap's idea, make him contact.
I don't have any say with these people.
No, but, anyway, whatever.
I'll do it between 4:50 PM and 4:55.
Brian, if you want, I will contact him. I will take it on.
Or give me a name too.
An email to Mike Van Landingham, would be a good starting point.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it won't be the first, they're gonna get all these requests to do this. Everybody's gonna find out, what is this about?
And then their higher-ups will probably go, whoa, but, again, having your name in there, and the only reason I mentioned planning district commissions is because now we're, more bang for the buck. And,
Our PDC here is great, but Middle Peninsula PDC is outstanding.
yeah,
They smoke.
Yeah, it's unfair. It's unfair for any of the
They're gonna get our
PDCs to
money.
be
They're gonna get our
compared.
money.
Louis Lawrence is just incredible.
he's a force,
Okay.
and that's,
Well,
Yeah.
anyone else have any more discussion
I just wanted to
on
ask
this?
one more that,
What's our conclusion?
Brian's
I'll
got,
contact C's today, and I'm gonna contact C's today, and I'll try to make sure that they come to your October meeting.
And Tom, anyone else that Brian thinks should be here and can,
is there not a meeting in September?
No.
Okay.
I think with everything going on with staff right now, Hannah's gone. We haven't even advertised yet to replace her. to say I'm overwhelmed by utility scale solar projects right now is the understatement of the century. I could literally, I could keep 2 full-time busy people doing nothing but solar. Not to mention our permit volume's running 2 or 3 times above the 20-year historical average. Yesterday, I came in, all I did was talk to walk-ins. I had a thing on my desk, all I was trying to do was type one little paragraph. I didn't, by the time 5 o'clock rolled around, it was
Hey,
still
what
there.
the-
Computer was still open where I opened it at 8:30, and all I did
What
was,
did I tell you to say?
and that's most days. I
Put a
just,
sign on the door, German Shepherd inside, and at your own risk.
and I'll tell you too, the complaint, you just have all these homes on the water that were part-time homes or full-time homes now, and those people are using county services. They call us. A surveyor sat in my office yesterday trying to talk to me for 45 minutes, and he said, you answered 3 calls. One about a dog on the loose, one about a this and a that, and I said, yeah,
I would like to, I'd like to ask every board member and alternate in here to, and specifically our chair lady, that we help expedite the advertising of our vacant position. That you contact your supervisor and if you
no,
talk.
don't do that, don't do
If you could, okay, how about Mr. Gill? Mr. Gill, we need to get this job filled. It's been how many
that.
years,
When you
Brian?
get the
Well, right
Supervisors, it
now,
doesn't
as
work
we
the way.
speak-
That's backwards.
Well, it-
Brian, when did you vacate the environmental job? How many?
Long time ago.
2 years ago.
18.
We need to get some priority.
As we speak, we short one alternate. So I'm in the process of checking with a gentleman, but if y'all have somebody that, let me know. please.
Well, I hope we don't have to wait another 2 years or
I hope not either.
to-
That's why I want to get right on
to
it.
get the environmental compliance job filled.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, it should have been in the paper already.
Hey, should have, would have, could have.
It's an easy
Anyway,
thing.
given all that stuff, I'll have time to give you a good slate of projects for October, where, like Jay said, we can, I'm going through them now, and a couple I had to send back, you know, we're just trying to make sure we have some good projects for you for October. that
Okay,
have-
well,
What load do you
That are
expect?
complete.
well,
3 to 4 projects, yeah.
with that said, do I hear approval of minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, minutes approved. The meeting is adjourned at, what time is it?
All right, thank you.
10:40, is that correct?
Yeah, thank you all. All right, yeah.